Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 8th of December, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So to kick off today, we have an update from the Ethereum Foundation Ecosystem Support Program. Now they do these updates once a quarter, and this is the update given for Q3 of 2022 with over $8 million awarded to a bunch of grantees. Now you can check out the blog post for yourself, but you guys will know from when I've previously covered this, the grants are given to a wide range of different categories here, spanning from community and education to consensus client development, and execution layer development as well, cryptography, developer tools, general research, all that stuff there. But as I said, you can check out the blog post here for a full breakdown of the projects that have been funded, and the total funding was about $8 million for Q3. Now, I like going through these lists for a couple of reasons. One, I love to just keep on top of what the Ethereum Foundation is funding because it kind of shows what they find valuable. And two, it's a really good way to find projects to either follow along closely because it interests you, or get involved with it. So if you are looking for your next journey in Ethereum and you don't know really what you want to do, maybe you're already working full time and you're thinking, okay, well, I want to do something on the side. I want to add more value to the Ethereum ecosystem. And whether you're a researcher or a developer or anyone in between, doing community stuff, all that good stuff as well, you can check out this list, check out the projects, and maybe find your side hustle here, or side gig, as they say, right? So those are the two reasons why I like reading through these things and highlighting it for you guys. But you can definitely go check this out. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. All right, next up, we have an update out of the Reth client. So Georgios from Paradigm said, excited to be open sourcing Reth, an Ethereum execution layer client built in Rust. Reth is a new Apache/MIT licensed full node implementation of Ethereum by Paradigm and the community, focused on contributor friendliness, modularity, and performance. Now, I did highlight Reth, I think, not last week, it was a few weeks ago now, as this new client that's been built in Rust on the execution layer side of things. And it's great that we've got another execution layer client in the fray here. I'm going to be really curious to see how quickly it gains market share. I did go over yesterday how on ethernodes.org, you can see that Geth's market share is coming down, and now we have Nethermind, Besu, and Aragon gaining market share. But with Reth, it seems that we've got another mainnet ready client for people to use, and I'm going to be spinning up my own. I haven't done one yet. I want to experiment with it and see what the experience is like for it there, but this should definitely help with client diversity. So I'm very much looking forward to this. But you can check out the blog post, of course, in order to get like a full breakdown of what's going on here. And Georgios also has a thread as well. But I do want to just quickly touch on maybe the elephant in the room that you would have seen going about on Twitter today. And I did discuss this drama when Reth was first announced. But basically, there is still ongoing drama between Reth and Aquila. And Aquila is a Ethereum full node that was being built, or sorry, I should say Ethereum execution layer client that was being built. And then the team, or at least kind of the lead of the team, said that they were going to stop development on it because the people behind Reth stole their ideas, and now they're accusing them of stealing their code. I haven't really digested all of the drama, too much just yet. It's very fresh, so I don't really want to spend too much time covering it because I want to just wait and see what comes out and who's right and who's wrong. But at the end of the day, like, I look at this and I'm like, okay, well, Aquila was good. It was being developed by former Aragon devs, I believed, and people that I spoke to said it was looking like a client that was actually a good client. It wasn't just a throwaway client, but it was a very small team. They weren't very well funded, right? And they obviously felt threatened when a competitor came along like Paradigm, who is extremely well funded. They probably have a bigger team working on it, maybe potentially a more experienced team. I'm not entirely sure, but definitely on the funding side of things, they have a lot more money there. So maybe they felt threatened there, but they also probably felt like they were hard done by, because there were conversations that were shared between Georgios and Artem from Aquila, where basically it looked like, and I don't know if this was the exact case. The screenshots I saw weren't that damning, but it kind of looked like Georgios was prying Artem for information on how to build a better client, or just like different kind of things got to do with execution layer clients. But as I said, I don't want to dive too deep into that one. You guys can make up your own opinion on that. I may touch on it again when the picture becomes clearer, because as I said, it's still fresh, so we don't really know there. But all in all, just great to see a new execution layer client here. And I know Aquila isn't being worked on right now, but I think that it didn't really, I don't know if it was actually mainnet ready yet. I think it was just being developed. And even if it was, it didn't really have much market share. I think just by virtue of Paradigm being really well known, Reth being, live now, and people are talking about it a lot more than they were with Akula, I think there's going to be more, I guess, adoption of this more quickly than there would have otherwise been for Akula. So that's just a sad fact of how things work. If anyone has spent any time in this ecosystem or any kind of online ecosystem in general, it's all about the attention economy. And I think that I think I might have touched on Akula once or twice in the past, but they didn't really make much noise on Twitter. They were obviously very heads down building, but I think you can be heads down building, but you still need to make noise. Noise, puts it on my radar. I cover it, other people to cover it, other people use it, and then you get market share and you feel better about what you're building, obviously, because no one wants to build something that no one uses, right? So I think taking all that, just all in all, I think it's not a negative. That I think when you look at it like a negative positive thing, and maybe maybe you disagree with me on this, but if you look at it as a whole, the drama included, the clients included, and look at Akula not being developed anymore, but Reth being developed, I think on net it actually ended up just being positive for the Ethereum ecosystem, because we now have a really strong client in Reth, right? A really well-funded client that's independent of the Ethereum Foundation, independent of any of the other teams building execution layer or even consensus layer clients, which I think is very, very important. Now, there's one last thing I wanted to touch on where I saw some people say that they believe this move from Paradigm basically means that they bought a seat at the core devs table, so to speak. And I kind of saw those comments. I was like, this is a weird take, because you can't just buy your way into the core devs, right? Just because you've developed a client, maybe you'll get to sit on the core dev calls and give your opinion on those calls, but that doesn't matter, right? There have been people invited to those calls, such as miners, to give their thoughts, give their opinions on things, but they didn't really have any sway on anyone, right? They didn't have any real say in anything. They were invited, I believe, over concerns about 1559 and then the merge, and nothing really changed from that. So it's one thing to get invited to a call and be on a call, on the core devs call, I should say, and it's another to actually have influence over it. And there's, the core devs, they've been around for so long, they're not just going to be like, oh, well, Paradigm's developing a client now, let's listen to them. Let's make sure their voice is heard. Your voice is determined. Sorry, the power of your voice is determined by your merit and determined by a bunch of other factors as well. How good of an ecosystem contributor are you? Are you a good steward of the Ethereum protocol? It's not like Paradigm said, okay, we're going to develop this client, we're going to buy our way into the core devs, and now we have more sway over things and we can push things in that we want. I don't think that's the case at all. And it's kind of silly, because if that was the case, then I'd be really bearish on Ethereum anyway, because that would mean that Ethereum governance got captured a long time ago if you could just buy your way in, right? Or you could just develop a client and automatically get a seat at the table. So I just thought that was a bizarre take from a few people that I saw on Twitter, and I think they were just saying that because they were taking the side of the Akula devs, which is fine. I mean, you can take whatever side you want, but I think it clouded their judgment over that, and I don't think there's any capture of Ethereum governance going on just because a big, obviously, VC like Paradigm has put their money behind a client now and basically come up with a client that gets them, I guess, like a seat at the table, so to speak. But the seat at the table is not there because of the money that they have. It's there because they developed an Ethereum client, and anyone can do this. Obviously, it's not easy, right? But anyone can develop an Ethereum client, and as we've seen, like there are a few teams out there developing Ethereum clients that aren't, extremely well funded or anything like that. And there are other people that sit on the core devs calls as well, and other people that aren't even paid by anyone in the Ethereum ecosystem to be there, but they're just, community members that are just really interested in things. So I think taking all that, Ethereum's governance process is definitely very merit-based, and I don't think there's a way to buy your way in and buy influence there. But maybe there could be in the future, but right now I don't think there is. And as I said, if there was, I would be bearish on Ethereum, to be honest, because I think I've said it before and I'll say it again: the social layer is the most important part of a blockchain, and the part of the social layer, or a big part of the social layer, is the governance process. So if the governance process is compromised, and if it's basically bought and paid for, well, then there's no point being part of that ecosystem anymore, because you're basically just at the whims of actual oligarchs, right? And we're just recreating the existing system. So, I'm not saying that it can't ever happen to any chain, right? They get to that point where they've been captured, but I'm not seeing that happening within Ethereum today. So that's the last thing I wanted to talk about on that one. I may retouch on the drama surrounding Reth and the Akula client if more comes to light on that front. All right, so Ashin put a tweet out today where he said, looks like Lido proposed its first block with a distributed validator on Goerli yesterday. So you guys will know that I've covered Obel Network being live on Goerli and bringing on a bunch of pilot validators in order to test their distributed validator technology, aka DVT. So what does this mean? Well, Ashin said in the comments, it means 7 Lido operators, each holding a fraction of a validator private key, work together to produce a block cooperatively. Learn more about the tech at this link here. That, and then the person who asked that question said that's amazing, and I agree. That is amazing. That's so awesome that you could have a provably secure distributed validator private key where you basically have redundancy here. So these 7 Lido operators were holding a fraction of the key and able to produce a block, cooperatively here, which is just amazing. And I've talked about DVT tech before and how it's going to benefit the Ethereum beacon chain with more decentralization, both on the validator front, but also the geographic distribution front, which is becoming more and more important in the wake of the OFAC sanctions, of course. But yeah, just great to see that testing is going well on Goerli for Obel Network here. Yeah, and I think Obel is waiting until withdrawals are enabled to go live on mainnet here, so we'll have to wait until that happens, which isn't too long away. I mean, March, April-ish by the looks of things right now, so we'll see about that. But yeah, great to see the testing going well on Goerli here, and just, I forgot to disclose it before, I'm an investor in Obel Network, so just a disclaimer there for you guys. All right, so there is this Twitter account, ZPrize, that I came across, and they were running a competition that they've got some winners for here. So the winning submissions will be open source for the benefit of all, and here is a list of winners from this competition. So what was this competition? Well, as I said, I just came across this recently. It seems like it was a competition for coming up with new ways of doing zero knowledge stuff, basically, across the whole gamut here. So you can see here that the winners include people that have built accelerating proof generation operations on GPU/FPGAs, accelerating NTT operations on an FPGA, and there's accelerating elliptic curve operations and finite field arithmetic. These are definitely very technical things, very in the weeds of the cryptography side of things, but there were 3 prizes here, and you can see that our first prize was given to, I don't know how to say that name there. It starts with Y and then it's RRID, RID Software, maybe the Y is silent. Second prize went to Gregor Michabod. I've said that wrong as well, but independent. Third prize went to Manta Network and Jump. That's funny that Jump Crypto's in there. Jump hasn't really got the greatest of reputations in crypto these days. And then there's a bunch of other kind of things in the thread here, but yeah, you can go check this out for yourself. I just wanted to highlight this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so I forgot to cover this the other day, but A16Z released this collect.test.eth.org resource the other day, which is basically a testnet ETH claim for prior Ethereum developers. So addresses that have deployed 1 or more contracts on mainnet/Goerli/Sepolia before November 15th, 2022, eligible for a one-time claim of 10 Goerli and Sepolia test ETH. Goerli ETH is supplied by Afri here, and Sepolia ETH is supplied by Tim Byko. So yeah, if that fits the bill for you, if you were someone who deployed or have an address that deployed to these testnets before this date, well, you can get some testnet ETH here. And the reason why this is being done like this is because the market on Goerli ETH for Geth, was kind of cornered. People were speculating on it, and it was actually making a Geth be incredibly scarce and the price of it go up, which was just weird. I think people were doing it for airdrops and things like that, and I think Sepolia was maybe going to suffer the same fate. So this is just an easy way for developers to get some testnet ETH if they have deployed to these other testnets, to these testnets and to mainnet before this date. So if that applies to you, go collect some free Goerli ETH and Sepolia ETH. I'll link this resource in the YouTube description for you below. All right, so the FE language here announced that a fun bug bounty program written in FE. So in other news, for the first time, FE code has hit the Ethereum mainnet. And they announced this, I think, 24 hours ago or so, a bit more than 24 hours ago now. And then just before, someone took the jackpot of 3 ETH and ran away on this. So you can read the thread about what happened with the bug bounty program there. But what is the FE language here? Well, basically, It's an alternative to Solidity and to Viper, which is already being used on Ethereum. So if you're a developer, this is definitely going to be interesting for you. And you can check them out at their Twitter page and check out their blog posts and all that good stuff as well. But a lot of developer stuff today, I just noticed. But yeah, you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But if you want to know what happened with the bug bounty program as well, you can check out the thread here, which does a good job of explaining it. I'll link that in the YouTube description below as well. All right, so something I missed yesterday was that David Schwartz here from the Polygon Hermes team announced the progress of announced an update on the progress of EVM equivalence in Polygon zkEVM effort. So currently, the Polygon zkEVM is passing 99.5% of Ethereum test vectors that apply to their Type 3 implementation, which means almost 10,000 tests have passed here. This is an absolutely massive milestone. I think the Polygon ZK stuff is making some really big strides here. And I think they're doing this for a few reasons. One, the Polygon POS chain is great, but it's obviously not a long-term solution. And they want to migrate that to a ZK thing one day. And I've talked, a zkEVM one day. And I've talked about this before on the refill, so I won't rehash it here. And also they want to, the race is on to get like a zkEVM to mainnet and then start getting adoption on it and start getting an ecosystem built around it. And it seems like the Polygon zkEVM is getting closer and closer here, which is awesome to see. We're coming up on the end of the year. I believe they said that, I think they said that their zkEVM would be on mainnet by the end of the year, maybe even early next year. But I mean, it's going to get there eventually. I don't think the race is as... I don't think the race to deploy is as important as people make it out to be, because there are ecosystems that came later on the, I guess, like L2 front, I should say, that outcompeted ones that came earlier. And I think with Polygon, it's funny because they have such a strong BD and marketing team already. They have such a strong relationship base with different projects already that it's not going to be hard for them to get adoption on their zkEVM. Whereas other teams may not have as much success as Polygon does, and Polygon may be able to come even later than the other teams to mainnet with zkEVM, but have more success because they're going to leverage those relationships. So I think that speaks to the importance of not just building and deploying the tech, but also making sure that you have a really great business development and marketing and relationship kind of pipeline. And the reason why Polygon has that is because of the POS chain. See what and I've said this for a long time, that the POS chain, even though it's not a layer 2, right? Even though it's just a side chain, like as they call it, right? It still adds a lot of value to Ethereum for a bunch of other reasons that I've outlined before. But a big reason is that Polygon gets to leverage that to bring people into the Ethereum ecosystem to use the layer 2s once they're ready. And as I've said before, the POS chain's end state is to become a zkEVM. So once we get there, maybe it's not going to happen anytime soon, but once we get there, then everyone just comes along with it. The user base, the ecosystem, the projects that are already on the POS chain, they just automatically migrate across. It's the same thing as what happened with the Ethereum merge. And we merged the chain, but like nothing changed for end users. It was all still the same for them. They were just using it, and the chain was just secured by proof of stake instead of proof of work. So when you take it like that, it's obviously a very big positive there. So just great to see Polygon making a lot of progress here, and I can't wait to play around with their zkEVM on mainnet myself. And in other Polygon news as well, this is on their POS chain side of things, but this applies to EVMs in general. So they basically were able to make the EVM up to twice as fast with a few different technical things that they've kind of done here. And there's a blog post explaining this, but this is very cool because, as I've said before, the EVM has pretty much already won. It has a massive moat, a massive network effect. There are so many people building on it and working with it. So how do we improve the EVM? What are the biggest improvements we can bring to the EVM? Well, one of the things, and probably pretty much a major thing, is this: it's very slow as compared to other virtual machines that are out there. It's quite slow. So how do we make it faster? Well, there are a bunch of teams working on this right now, Polygon obviously being one of them, because they've managed to crack up to 2 times speed increase on the Polygon POS chain, which is EVM based, by parallelizing the EVM. And parallelization of the EVM has been a holy grail of sorts, because the EVM doesn't have parallelization, which means it has to do things sequentially, which is obviously slower than doing things in parallel. And by things, I mean transactions. You can see here what this looks like. So in a serial execution, it executes the transactions sequentially, but in a parallel execution, it can execute transactions obviously in parallel, right? So you can see the speed benefits from that. And because the Polygon POS chain is EVM based, this applies to that as well. So that's what Polygon has done here, and you can see the differences in speed between serial and parallel. Lower is actually better here on this chart, and parallel is much better here. And this doesn't just apply to Polygon's POS chain. I'm sure they're going to be using this with their zkEVMs. I'm sure this tech's going to be open sourced for other ecosystems to use this. And the fact that people are innovating in a really big way on the EVM is really promising, because look, I don't think we need to bring these upgrades to layer 1 Ethereum anytime soon, but the beauty of both alts, L1s that use the EVM, sidechains that use the EVM, and layer 2s that use the EVM is that they can move faster, right? And they can move faster, they can deploy new things, because Ethereum layer 1 is going to always and keep just moving slower and slower as time goes on for obvious reasons. So how do we experiment with the EVM? Well, we do it at the higher layers, or we do it at the alternative layers, such as the Polygon POS chain. So taking all that into account, it's very, very positive here, and it's very awesome to see Polygon innovating. So if you want to read about exactly what they did, you can check out this blog post, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. All right, so I forgot to cover this the other day, but Chainlink finally had staking version 0.1 go live in early access. So this is a capped staking pool, and I believe the staking pool already reached that cap. So there was a 25 million link cap here available for early access. So you can stake your link today to secure your spot and earn rewards for securing the Chainlink network and the larger Web3 ecosystem. I don't talk about Chainlink too much on the Refuel. I don't know why that is. I think that the funny thing is that Chainlink is such an important piece of critical infrastructure for the Ethereum ecosystem, because it powers a lot of DeFi, that it tends to just sit in the background and you don't hear too much about it. But and obviously they're an Oracle network, but they're trying to do more than just be an Oracle network. And something like staking has been a long time coming. They have their native token where you stake it and then you can earn fee revenue. I don't know for sure if there's inflation rewards being paid out either. I assume that there probably will be. But yeah, you earn fee revenue from the people and the services paying Chainlink to access that Oracle data. So it's basically, Chainlink wants to be a decentralized marketplace for, I guess, like off-chain data, so to speak. So not just price data with their oracles, but any kind of off-chain data, any kind of off-chain agreements and real-life contracts, all that sorts of stuff. They want to be a service to bring that all on-chain. And to do that, you need to form an economy, you need to form a marketplace, which is what they're doing with their... Which is what they have been doing, but also what they're doing with their staking here. So yeah, if you own Link, I don't think you can stake it now if you haven't yet, because it's reached its cap, but I'm sure they're going to increase this cap as time goes on. So definitely keep an eye on this if you haven't yet, and you can read the thread and the blog post for a full breakdown on what's involved with Chainlink staking version 0.1. All right, last up here was a tweet that I put out today where I said, teams really need to be acutely aware of how much activity happening around their project is organic versus airdrop farming. If the project doesn't have a token yet, high chance that most of the activity is just airdrop farming, which could lead to a false sense of product market fit. And this was in response to a tweet that I saw from Will Sheehan here, highlighting the Stargate Bridge, because the Stargate Bridge Twitter account basically said that, hey, you know, Stargate is currently doing almost as much volume as the next 10 bridges combined. Seamless liquid transfer is apparently in demand. And then you can kind of see the stats here and the number of transactions as opposed to other bridges and the volume and things like that. But the thing is that you can see Will showing here that demand additionally appears to be very high in increments of just over 100 tokens, which means this doesn't look like organic behavior, right? This looks like airdrop farming or liquidity mining or just something where people are getting rewards for doing this. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does distort the view of product market fit. And we've seen this time and time again in the crypto ecosystem, where projects will have massive liquidity mining campaigns, or they won't have a token yet. Well, I should talk about, they won't have a token yet, right? And then there'll just be massive amounts of airdrop farming going on. And then as soon as they launch the token, a lot of that activity dries up. And then, of course, when they launch their token, they do liquidity mining. And that, again, is just lots of inorganic demand. And then once that ends, or once that tapers off a lot, the activity just goes to zero, basically. It goes back to what it was when it was actually organic. And for a lot of these projects, there's not much organic demand there to begin with. And that can give a very false sense of security and false sense of product market fit, where the teams are like, oh my God, we are doing so well. We have so much product market fit. It's awesome. we're gonna rule the world, so to speak, right? And then it turns out that no, it was just because you were giving people free money, basically, right? And someone in the replies I actually read made a good point as well, where they said teams don't care because this is easy eye candy for early investors, plus leads to bigger raises. That's true. That I agree with the second part. I don't agree with the first part. So I agree with the fact that it's easy eye candy for investors and leads to bigger raises. It 100% does. I mean, like, fundraising is all about how you position yourself and how, publicly, right? Look at 3 Arrows Capital. They positioned themselves publicly as some god tier fund that was making all the best trades and making, all this money. And then they went bankrupt, right? And turns out they committed fraud as well. Well, sorry, I should say they're accused of committing fraud as well. They still haven't been arrested or anything like that, which, yeah, I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, I don't agree with the first part where they said teams don't care. I think that when I'm talking about teams here, I'm talking about the ones that actually are building something or at least trying to build something long-term sustainable. I'm not talking about the teams that spin up some fork of something just to make money. I'm literally talking about the ones that are missionaries, not mercenaries. So when looking at just those, these teams are ones that I want to basically say to, hey, be aware that you can create a product that you love and people can use it. But if you're pre-token, a lot of the time it's going to be airdrop farmers. And if you have a token and doing liquidity mining, a lot of the time it's going to be just farmers in general, like yield farmers, right? So, and I think as time goes on and as more examples, flow in, teams become more and more aware of this, founders become more aware of this, and it becomes less of an issue. But it's still been historically been a pretty big issue, I think. And it's been like that way since, I guess, the start of DeFi summer, basically, when liquidity mining was popularized by compounds, and then everyone started doing it. And then I think we haven't learned our lesson. Like, there's a lot of ecosystems that keep doing it. And I'm not saying it's bad to do. I'm just saying that it distorts a lot of things. And as I've said before, like, if a project doesn't have a token, it's pretty much guaranteed that they're going to have a token in the future. And there's a lot of these services now, like there's a lot of these Twitter accounts I see as well that kind of highlight the projects that don't have tokens and give you a cheat sheet of what you can do to possibly earn an airdrop. And of course, we have an airdrop hunting channel in the Daily Gwei Discord channel too. And as I've said before, I don't blame people for doing this. It's literally free money if you can get it, right? Maybe there's a small upfront cost because you have to do some on-chain stuff. But basically, it's based on previous airdrops, there is a chance of making hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, if not potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars from these airdrops. So I don't blame anyone for doing this. And it's on the teams to actually work around this and make sure that they build organic, lasting communities and not just mercenaries that are there just for the money. If they want to create a long-lasting project. If they're just there for the money, well, I mean, I don't really care about those folks. But anyway, on that note, I'm going to leave it at that for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.